Thanks, Sarah, and welcome everyone. I did want to just point out this is a Zoom call that we've got this set up. All the participants should be muted. We weren't exactly sure how many people would show up for this, so we're happy that you're here. We may have some time for some interaction, but we'll also ask for questions in the chat if you have any questions along the way, so we can address those. But I did want to just start off with kind of some of that housekeeping and then begin here. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our presentation on how NICET's highly regarded CMT certifications, now paired with performance examinations, to meet hands-on requirements, are an essential part or essential component of modern quality management system. Performance Examination Administrator John Quidley will guide you through the process and review available performance examinations and discuss what to expect. And additionally, Nicest's Manager of Certification Program Development, Sara Clark, will provide administrative information on NICET recognition. So a little bit about John Quidley. Well, first, I guess I should tell you about myself. Back to me first, but I'm really serving just as your host today, but I'm glad you're here. I am NICET's Senior Director of Credentials and Administration. I'm responsible for implementing the policies and directions established by the NICET board. So once again, thank you. Glad you're here. And I am just excited about this new feature to our CMT program. And it really was John Quidley and Sara working together and with other staff, but really to make this happen. It's something that NICET has had in the works for several years, but it's because of their interest and dedication that we were able to launch that this new feature during a pandemic. But a little bit about John Quidley. He is currently President and Senior Quality Consultant with Caliber Consulting Services, LLC. His role is involved helping businesses serving as their laboratory and quality systems consultant, developing quality systems that meet industry standards and ensure profitability. John's experience of 27 years in the civil construction industry includes a consistent record of improved quality control through effective planning and performance management. John is a NICET Level 4 in CMT soils and geotech construction, and Level 2 in concrete and geotech exploration. And he also serves as the recognized test administrator for the performance examinations. Sara Clark is the manager of the certification program development at NICET. She's been with NICET for more than 10 years in certification, test development, and maintenance. Sara oversees the development and maintenance activities for NICET's 13 multi-level career track certification programs in mechanical, electrical, and civil fields. She manages staff, allocated budgets, numerous industry volunteers and subject matter experts, and psychometric consultants to keep development and maintenance activities on schedule. Sara is also on the board of the Performance Testing Council, where she serves as secretary. PTC is a nonprofit consortium dedicated to innovation in the design, development, and delivery of performance testing. So all of that just goes hand in hand as we move forward with this program. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Sara. Once again, welcome everybody, and thanks.
Thank you, Chip. So a little bit about Nystat. Nystat has over 45,000 active certifications. We have approximately 154,000 certifications that we've issued since we were founded in 1961. On average, we have more than 10,000 exams that we administer each year. Pre-COVID, it was probably closer to 14,000. For a few months, almost a year ago, we were shut down for testing, so that impacted our numbers this year. We provide nationally applicable career track voluntary certification programs. As Chip mentioned, we have certification programs in civil, electrical, mechanical. And what we're talking about today is going to be under our civil program for construction materials testing. NICET is an independent third-party certification organization. We don't provide training. We do have outside training partners that provide training in areas that NICET does provide certification. NICET doesn't specifically endorse any of those organizations. They operate independently under their own guidelines, provide their own training organizations, their own training structures. So we do have that link on our website that you can find a training partner if you're looking for training or kind of test prep a little bit before you take your certification exam. NICET is a division of the National Society of Professional Engineers. However, NICET is a not-for-profit section of NSPE. So as we talked a little bit, NICET certifications, civil engineering, electrical and mechanical engineering. Underneath our civil engineering, we have our construction materials testing, asphalt, concrete, and soils. And then we have our optional add-on performance examinations that we'll be talking about further on today. Also under civil engineering, we have transportation construction inspection, which is our highway construction inspection. And all 4 of these programs, asphalt, concrete, soils, highway construction inspection, they each have 4 levels of certification. Within the construction materials testing, there is aggregates as it applies to each of the different subfields. Underneath our electrical and mechanical engineering technology, we have electrical power testing, which is 4 levels. We have video security systems, which are 2 different tracks, one for the technician, which is 4 levels, and one for designers, which is 2 levels. And then within our fire protection systems, we have 5 programs. Fire alarm systems, the inspection and testing of fire alarm systems, water-based systems layout, the inspection and testing of water-based systems, and then our special hazard systems. We also have recently opened up the fire alarm systems and the water-based systems layout for international testing. Right now it's primarily in India that we're doing that pilot test. Our hope is to expand more of our fire protection systems for international testing, starting in India and then expanding as we're able to. We do have a new program under development. It's within our building systems area, and it's titled In Building Public Safety Communications. So it focuses on the emergency responders' abilities to communicate inside a building while they're working in the building, handling an emergency, so they don't have to tie directly into a building or rely on walkie-talkies that have interference. NICET, as you mentioned, our multiple certification levels for some of our programs focuses on a career path. So starting at the bottom of this graphic is our technical trainee, which is an individual with 6 to 12 months of work experience. They're working under constant direct supervision of someone higher than them. This could be someone that either has an education or a background in engineering technology, but more than likely it's someone that is either out of high school or has some sort of trade school, but it does not require any type of a degree to be our engineering technician. Our second level is the associate engineering technician. They have 2 years of work experience and they're working under general supervision of someone higher. They might be helping out with the technical training, but they're starting to supervise a little bit. The engineering technician is someone with 5 years of work experience. They're working more independently. They may supervise others. More than likely, they're just working independently. And the final level is the senior engineering technician. They have 10 years of work experience. They are the ones that are going to be supervising and managing others, whether it's the technicians underneath them or working on a project, working with the engineers, working with contractors, the owners, depending on the organization and the company. And this individual at 10 years of work experience, in order to be certified, they have demonstrated their involvement in a major project. The certification requirements for NICET programs, there is a written examination. We are currently administering our exams through computer-based testing, the standard model exams through Pearson VUE test centers. They're national test centers, open 6, sometimes 7 days a week. You can sign up if you live in Virginia. You can test in Washington State, depending on how your testing window allows and where you're going to be. So there's far more flexibility than the paper and pencil exams allowed for candidates. Certification does require relevant progressive demonstration of work experience. So as we talked about previously, the 6 to 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's the work experience that's going to be documented. This third portion for certification is a verification of competency, and that comes in the form of performance measures. All of the NICET certification exams do have a number of performance measures for each level. In order to be certified at a higher level, the lower level performance measures have to be verified as well. So it's a gradually adding on as you advance in a level within a program, there's additional performance measures to be verified. Then for the programs that have a level 3 and a level 4, there is a professional recommendation that's required. And this is someone that is overseeing their work. It can be an engineer, it can be an AHJ, someone that is not their peer or someone that they are supervising. The final portion for certification for the level 4 is that major project. And they're demonstrating a task of work that they've completed where they were in the primary supervisor role. It's a project that was a period of time that it took to complete. It involved a decent sized budget. It was overseeing many different moving parts, whether it was multiple technicians or dealing with different jurisdictions or different government officials, just a demonstration of a major project within their certification area. This is a high-level description of the content outline for our construction materials testing asphalt certification program. As you can see, starting here on the left, the level 1 has 7 different domain areas, and these are the large content areas. Underneath the domains, there are individual tasks, and the tasks are where the individual questions are coming from. High level domains is where the scores are coming from. So it tells you how you did on each area if you didn't pass. Then at the bottom of each of the level descriptions, you get an idea of the number of questions and the amount of time to take that particular test. As you can see, moving from level 1 to a level 4, the time fluctuates a little bit, with the level 2 and level 3 being a longer exam with more questions. That's where the primary focus of the certifications, a lot of the content is. Level 4 is a smaller number of questions, but more time because they're more content driven, they're more technical, they get into the reporting and the supervision. Some of the content areas carry over a little bit between different levels. So there's asphalt mix sample preparation at level 1, there's asphalt mix testing at level 2, there's testing and design of asphalt mix at level 3, and then testing again at level 4 and design again at level 4. So the technical aspects increase as the levels get higher. Again, a similar demonstration for the construction materials testing concrete content outline. As you may have noticed, between asphalt and concrete, there is quite a bit of overlap in the domain names. They're quite similar. There's a little bit of a difference dealing with concrete instead of asphalt, but most of the domains are very similar. Also within this subfield, most of the levels have the same number of questions. The time might fluctuate a little bit based on the particular subfield, dealing with standards, taking them into the exam, that sort of thing, but they're all about the same length and the same number of questions. Our final content outline is soils. And as you can see, it's quite a bit different from asphalt and concrete. This is where a lot of the aggregates that you found in the paper and pencil exams, this is where a lot of that falls. So just the types of information that you're covering, the technical aspects, what you're doing with the material as opposed to concrete and asphalt, it just drove the content outline to look a little bit different. Overall, the number of questions are very similar. These exams for level 2 and 3 are a little bit longer than asphalt and concrete, but the number of questions are about the same. This is kind of a more specific example of the content outline for soils level 2. So if we noticed from the prior screen, the domain level is 2.6 laboratory testing of soils. And then as I mentioned before, there are individual tasks underneath that domain. So this particular domain has 9 different tasks. And then within these individual tasks, that's where the questions themselves are coming from. And one of the things that we wanted to point out with this example are these little numbers that are after each of the tasks. These relate to a specific reference that's listed on the general references page for soils level 2. So if we look on the reference list here under 0402 concrete and aggregates, reference number 1 is Astm C136. And it tells us that reference number 1, C136, was used in 261 by this little number 1 here. And it was used probably in another area of the content outline as well. But these other little numbers, number 4 is used in 261. Number 23 is here, 2, 4. So each of the references are numbered, and then the individual task where that reference was used to write exam questions is listed at the end of each task. So that helps candidates put the content outline and the reference list together to do their test preparation. These documents are available on the Nystat website for a free download. So I'm going to hand this over now to John Quidley, and he's going to talk through Niceset's performance assessments and give you more details on how those work and how they're administered. John?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So continuing with the theme, performance assessments, an essential component of a modern quality management system, we're going to tackle this next part in three important components. And it's going to be quality standard compliance, performance assessment implementation, and performance assessment scope, basically the test methods involved. So as we go into the next slide, we're going to talk about the NICET performance examinations. As you can see there, there's a few pictures of some of the performance examinations already being performed out in the industry. As we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about the quality standards and why this really is an essential component. So as we go to the next slide and we talk about the quality standards, mostly everyone here has probably seen these various quality standards during assessment time or reference them quite often. As we look at the first standard, AASHTO R18, most of us are very familiar with that one. Any sort of a AASHTO resource accreditation, Army Corps of Engineer certification will incorporate R18. As we get into ASTM, we're looking at C1077, primarily dealing with concrete testing and aggregates. Astm D3666, dealing with flexible pavement, primarily with asphalt and roadway construction. Astm D3740, primarily dealing with soils and rock, used in engineering, design, and construction. So CMT and indeed geotechnical testing involved there. Astm E329, which is considered by many the gold standard for a testing agency or inspection organization to attain. And ISO 17025, which is primarily pertains to A2LA accreditation or any ILAC subsidiary. So as we move on to the next slide, let's start first with AASHTO R18. Now, as we look at that first section there under laboratory supervisor, and these are taken right from the standard itself, we're going to see that there's various times listed there, or times of evaluation for each of the technicians to have their competency tested. So as we look in the middle, for example, we're going to see that a technician that has roughly 6 years experience shall be evaluated every 24 months. And then as we look at technicians that are new, they're going to be evaluated during the first 6 months and probably tested 12 months after that. So we see R18 gives you various times to test for competency. Also, what R18 allows an organization to do is test by various different individuals. So it doesn't have to be in-house performance evaluations per se with AASHTO R18. The demonstrations shall be evaluated either by in-house personnel, a representative of a certification program, a representative of an assessment body, or a consultant person or company used to provide objective evaluation of testing competency. So an organization has various tools that they can use, various personnel, in order to accommodate this part of the standard. So as we move on to our next quality standard, we look at Astm C1077. Now, this is, of course, a very familiar standard. As we look at, for example, section 6.1.2, 6.1.2.1, detailing laboratory and field supervisors. They have to have at least 3 years of experience, but they shall be certified in the relevant tests required of which they're a supervisor, what they're actually managing or supervising. So this can be in-house, it can be external. However, they shall be certified in the following methods detailed in section 6. As we look at section 6.1.4.2, performance examination is required in order to be certified under Astm C1077. Now, what's interesting about Astm C1077 for smaller organizations, even those who have engineers perhaps that are listed on the organizational chart that are running tests, those PEs also have to be certified under C1077, which is very particular to this quality standard. As we go to the next slide, we're going to look at Astm R0030, which is a manual, not a standard, but an Astm manual. As we look at section 2.4, it's going to talk about certification programs. Now, it's not endorsing any of these programs, but it's just providing a list of programs that are applicable to certification, that are recognized, nationally accredited and certified to certify individuals in these particular test methods. And of course, Nicestat, ACI, PCI are all listed there. So as we move to the next quality standard, Astm D3740, we see there in section 7.2, as well as going on to 7.3, that the supervisors here must have their performance evaluated at least every 36 months. So this is for 3740. And that technicians must have their performance evaluated every 24 months. So it's 7.3.1 and 7.3.2. As we move to the next slide, we see 7.5 and 7.6. The written examinations can be in-house, as well as the performance evaluations here. The caveat, though, is that the written examinations and the performance examinations for 3740 must meet a quality criteria. So it has to be exams that's going to cover the full test method, including the test procedure, any preparation involved, calculation, and reporting. And the performance evaluations must list exactly what the performance evaluation is as part of your quality system. So our next slide is going to talk about 3666, and with Astm D3666, as we look at 7.2.1 as well as 7.3.1, these individuals, supervisors, must be externally certified. So there is not any internal certification for 3666. They must be externally certified. As we look to the right, that is an excerpt there taken from ISO 17025, just basically stating in 6.2.3 that the laboratory shall ensure that the personnel have the competence to perform laboratory activities for which they are responsible and to evaluate the significance of deviations. So what that means is that however you're evaluating your personnel under ISO 17025, you must have those procedures listed, documented, and verified for the assessor to actually view how you're conducting your assessments of your staff and personnel. So we go to our next quality standard. Yeah, Astm E329. This is a very peculiar standard in itself as we look at section 6.2.4 and 6.2.5. The supervisors have to be externally certified as well. So as listed there in the last sentence, certification by qualified national, regional, or state authorities as appropriate to the services is required. And another interesting aspect of Astm E329, it requires that each person be reevaluated at least every 3 years for each test method the person is authorized to perform. So how do we implement the performance assessments? That's what's really, I get a lot of questions about it. How do we do it? How do you go about basically applying for the assessment and basically get the process going? So let's talk a little bit about the modules that's going to be included. As already highlighted by Sara, it's going to be asphalt, concrete, and soils, but also another added module is aggregates, since aggregates applies to both asphalt and concrete. And so as we go to the next slide, there's going to be 12 basic steps or points to kind of talk about how this exam is going to be administered. So let's start with point 1. Examinations are administered by qualified NICET administrators and their examiners. So anyone that's qualified to be a Nystat administrator has to abide and do the assessment or the guidelines of NICET and their policies. In section 2, the content of the examinations are directly derived directly from the ASTM or AASHTO test standards. So there's no trick questions or anything like that. It follows pretty much straight down the line really with regards to the test standard itself. In section 3, the assessment checklist, and then we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, are going to address the full quality performance assessment as we kind of talked about in Astm D3740. So we're going to talk about methods, calculations, equipment, and how to report those calculations as part of the assessment. In point 4, candidates can choose 1 or 2, 3, or as many test methods really as they want, or the project manager wants them to take. So it's pretty much a la carte choosing for a technician, as long as the supervisor thinks they're ready for the performance assessment, they can choose it. The administrator is responsible for processing the candidate application. So we're going to talk about that process in just a moment. And then 6, NICET will audit the administrator's activities and also will maintain the database of candidates. So basically NICET will audit and in a way keep their thumbs on the administrators to make sure they're doing the assessments correctly. So as we move on to the next slide, 7, the testing facility can be a private, government, educational training facility or testing lab that's agreed upon in order to meet. I know right now, due to COVID, not everybody is having non-essential staff come into their office and so forth. And we're going to talk about remote assessments in just a moment to make that available. Point 8, the facility must meet the minimum requirements for equipment, materials, and procedures. So it must be a testing procedure, a testing lab that is actually performing the procedures. And the facility must comply with all the necessary health and safety regulations that you would expect with a testing agency. 10, the performance examination will be conducted in dedicated indoor and outdoor space, free of interferences, disturbances, or distractions. Examinations are reported on a pass-fail basis, and each candidate has 2 attempts in order to pass. Retesting, appeals, and challenges and other aspects of due process are also there in accordance with NICET's performance guidelines. So the application process, how do we go about applying for it? Well, it all starts with the NICET website. So this is the NICET homepage. So a candidate can go to either certification programs in the drop-down menu or just click Get Certified. And after they click that, they're going to see this page. And there is technician certification programs under civil engineering technology, and they'll click that. And it's going to take them here. They're going to have their 3 choices: asphalt, concrete, and soils. And then as they go, they're going to see performance evaluation link at the bottom of those 3. They're going to click that, and it's going to take them here. And this really goes through the complete steps. And NICET really has done an excellent job of making this really easy. So the first thing a candidate would want to do, if you look at part A there in step 2, is they would want to register and get their login information with NICET established. As we move to the next slide, this is basically the login or account information set up here. Very basic login information or setup, account setup. If the candidate chooses to have a remote assessment, that can be done here. If you look at part B, basically they will download a remote assessment application, send that to the administrator. In this case, it'd be me. And then they would want to contact me. And there's my contact info. As we see here, yes. And then as they go into the guidelines, this will be the next couple of steps here. They'd want to download the performance examination guidelines, read through it, see what's involved, see what's expected of them. This is the remote agreement. The reason why this agreement is put in place is just to let the candidate know this is a remote assessment, of course. Now, in conversations with AASHTO Resource, they are accepting this, but of course, it's under the NICET guidelines and policies. And this is the basic application package. So they would download this, fill this out, choose whatever test they want. Right. Okay, yes. And basically choose whatever methods or tests they want to be assessed. As we move to the next slide, send that to me. We'll work out scheduling to do the assessment, either remote or in person. And then that's it. Then the candidate will basically go to the site. They can download the checklist to be used during the assessment. It's going to be the same checklist I'm using. They can download that and start doing their preparation for the assessment. And this is what one particular checklist looked like. This is for CBRs. And we can see there the candidate name. And that's why the NICET ID is so important, because that's what Nicestat will use for this performance credential. Should the candidate pass, that's what will be on the credential. And they're going to get 2 tries if needed. And let's talk about some of the other test methods that are going to be involved. We didn't have a lot of time to go over every one, but this is just a capsulized form of that. If we look at asphalt modules, for example, you're going to have your basic asphalt test. So we see density, specific gravity, theoretical specific gravity. There's asphalt content by ignition method. We see at the bottom mechanical sieving by extracted aggregate. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about concrete. Yeah, concrete. Here you will see our basic concrete test for field as well as strength. So as we move to our next module, there's soils and your basic test here. Classification, water content, densities, Atterberg limits, sieve analysis, and hydrometer. And included in that will be the newer hydrometer standard Astm D3928. As we continue to move to soils, we're going to see specific gravity, California bearing ratio, CBRs, unconfines, and also even dynamic cone penetrometer. And aggregates, reducing field samples. We're going to have bulk specific gravities, relative densities, -200s, sand equivalents. And just continuing on, we have uncompacted voids, lightweight particles, organic impurities, and soundness. Yeah, soundness is there, listed there. And that's just a snapshot. There's more modules that we're going to be adding as far as performance testing is concerned, especially on the geotechnical side. But as of right now, the performance is there on a very basic level to get most labs through their performance assessments. Okay, and I'll hand it over to Sara.
Is it Sara or is it me? Are we at the
Yes,
Sara?
we're at questions. That is kind of the end of our content to cover. So we still have about 20 minutes left of our scheduled time if anybody has any questions. If there's not an overwhelming number of questions, you can unmute and ask your question. If there's too much talking over each other, then we'll start using the chat feature.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sure. My question pertains to the written portions of the exam. Has there been any discussions on making accommodations for folks that might have test anxiety or just have challenges completing the test in the time frame that's been selected?
Regina, do you want to address that with the ADA accommodations?
Yes, in the brick and mortar testing centers with Pearson VUE, we can arrange for several different options for ADA accommodations, including extended exam time, a separate room, a reader, a recorder. It all depends on what is outlined in the ADA accommodation forms that we require the candidates to fill out, and supply supporting documentation, and then we line everything up for the candidate.
Thank you very much.
I do see a couple of questions in the chat. Are the performance exams going to be recorded and reviewed by NICET personnel? And my understanding is that the results are recorded and the examinees, the process is reviewed. Is that correct? Am I explaining it right? Or do John and Sara want to jump in on that one?
That is the way that the process is working now. As John kind of mentioned in the beginning of his description of the performance exams, this is a beginning pilot period to kind of see how the checklists are going, how the process is working. So there may be a few adjustments that we make as we open it up to more administrators. But we have decided to work through the outside administrators to administer those performance exams. John knows the content, John knows the checklist, the standards. We trust him to do the administration of those exams and send us the results. NICET would get involved if there is a question or an appeal or a concern over the results, then NICET would get involved at that point. But up until the results are given to us, we're just collecting those results and giving candidates confirmation that they've completed. Do you want to add anything, John?
Yeah, and also, Robert, that's a good question. If the staff there within the lab or organization want to record the performance as it's being done, that's perfectly fine. So if you want to record, or even the remote assessment can be recorded. So yeah, that's not an issue.
All right, so I see the next question is, what is the primary income of NICET? And I guess there's a few ways that we can answer that. One, the NICET's main revenue source is exam fees and then recertification fees. For the case of the performance examinations, this is a partnership, but the revenue stays with the exam provider. If that makes sense. So in this case would be John. And I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but I'm hoping that if that's I tried to answer all of the above, if I could with that one. And then Robert asked, so the performance exams are in-house, which I think we talked about that, that it would be done within arrangement with one of the performance exam provider, in this case would be John's organization. Then the next one is, does the result of an exam include a practical performance evaluation that allows preliminary definition of the person's precision with respect to the result? My understanding is that it's based on the checklist. I don't, John, do you want to comment on that? It doesn't get beyond that.
Right. So it is based on the checklist. So as you go and take a look, maybe perhaps later, if you had an opportunity, you download the checklist, check it. It's going to cover not only the apparatus of the equipment, but the actual test procedure. And then, of course, some of the tests require a calculation. So that will be something that will be witnessed. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so then here's a good one. Why is Quidley not a NICET employee instead of being a consultant?
You know, I've thought about that. I've thought about asking you guys for a job. No. You want to answer that, Sara?
And I don't know that it's necessarily out of the question. It just wasn't within our business model at the time to do these exams. So I think that it's created a good partnership that we can work together, and each of us bring what we do best to the table to be able to offer this.
And there's a certain, along with that, Chip, there's a certain advantage to having independence in this. NICET, in a way, they're managing or guiding me through the process, and they're using what I bring to the table. to make this program work. And as Sara brought it out, there's going to be other opportunities for other administrators, to be able to do this as well in the future. So it's really good for the industry to have that independence.
All right. I don't know if you can see the next piece of that, John, that WISE equipment, MTS on the performance exam if the lab has already been inspected.
I can't see that. Where's that located?
So it was just right under after asking about you being an employee.
It's in the chat feature.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. WISE equipment, if the lab has already been inspected, reviewed. Okay. All right. That's a good question. So basically, in order for the assessment to really properly be assessed, just have to make sure they're using the right equipment for the right project or for the right test method. So that even for the remote assessments, that's something that is going to be looked at. So.
And the other part of that is that the performance exams are specific to an individual, whereas the lab accreditation by A2LA, CCRL, or AASHTO is specific to that lab. So a technician could come in, and even though the equipment is working properly, if they don't know what they're doing, they could mess it up or set a setting wrong or something like that. So it's important to make sure that the performance exams are following the individual standards, and that the technician knows what they're doing in case somebody before them messed up a setting.
It would pretty much be like any performance assessment, even like ACI, that you have, the proper rod, proper slump cone, it's not dented, it's in proper conformance, things like that.
So it says AASHTO resource requires a written exam to be administered aside from the practical exam. How is NICET addressing this, since the certification is based on CEUs? And our certification, maybe that's just a misunderstanding, is that we do have a written exam as part of the NICET certification. That is one of the requirements. And then Regina added the ADA form for anybody's interest on that. Thank you, Regina. Regina is Nicest staff, if that wasn't clear from when the question came up before. We didn't introduce all the staff that was on the call, but thank you, Regina. And then it says, where's John's organization located and who bears the cost of travel to an individual's lab? And I think John is based out of Texas, but has a couple of locations, and then the rest of that is between the individual that wants to be tested and John. Is that right, John?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm currently based out of Texas and Louisiana, but been really traveling all over the country to do the consulting. So the travel cost will be a client cost. That's who will bear the cost of it. But we do have remote assessments available now due to COVID. So I've been encouraging everyone to take advantage of that.
Okay. And then, do certain performance methods apply to the written exam levels, or do you have to do a certain number? How are the written and performance linked? And I think the intention is that they're not specifically linked to provide the candidate with the most flexibility. Is that generally right, John? Do you want to add to that?
Well, they're linked as far as the quality standards, as we talked about. Right now, the pilot program is for 2 years. So NICET has this as an optional choice to make, but it is a part of an organization's internal quality system. So they're linked, but they're not a requirement to get NICET certification.
Ahmed, Ahmed Faruqi, are you on the call? Do you want to explain the connection? Ahmed is our director of technical services still, and he kind of helped us work with John to come up with the checklist that he wanted. So can you kind of explain that connection?
Right. The simple answer is all the performance exam modules which are offered are included at level 1 and 2 in the written exams for Nystat for asphalt, concrete, and soils. So everything which we offer on the performance side is included on the written side.
I see the next question is from Leo, and I wonder if this is the Leo, Leo Sands. But it says, will the performance exams be more in line with the way AASHTO does them orally? Does anyone have familiar with that piece?
Yeah, that's a good question, Leo. And like some of them will be. Some of your simpler tests, for example, temperature, concrete, most of that can be done orally. Sampling can be done orally. Some test methods, though, it's going to require more than an oral explanation. So primarily depends on the test method. I would say most tests that I've done performance on right now, there's only been a couple that have been oral, and that's those two examples I just highlighted, sampling and like temperature of concrete. For the more advanced tests, I've actually witnessed the candidate go through the test procedure. So we've done it all the way through.
Well, thanks everyone. Once again, thanks, John. That's the last question that I see, unless somebody sees something that I missed.
I have a question if I can.
Yes, Taylor.
So I apologize. I'm still confused on how let's use concrete for an example. So if we want to take what is classically an ACI or a WASL concrete level 1, you take the written, then you do the slump and you do the temperature, unit weight, etc. When you want to go for a higher level NICET exam, what are the performance exams associated with that?
Is that to me, Taylor, or did anyone else want to?
Whoever can best answer, I'm fine with.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Taylor, the NICET model is very different from the ACI or the WASL model.
Yep.
The NICET, the ACI and the WASL models are very modular, specific set of ASTM test methods packaged, and you get your certification through training and a written exam and a performance exam. The NICET model relies on a concrete technician at a level 1 complete package. It includes concrete, but it includes other tests which are done by that technician at level 1. And that progresses into level 2. What does he do at level 2? So the way we offered the performance exams was to offer them in the most flexible way, so the industry can use them. Not everybody uses deal with ACI or the aggregates or the asphalt, or it varies quite a bit from one state to the other, from one city to the other, from one DOT to the other. So we offer them in the most flexible way you can have. You want to create the ACI equivalent package, you can do that. You want to add aggregates to that, you can do that. You want to go AASHTO rather than ASTM, you can do that. You want to do AASHTO and ASTM, you can do that. So we try to be as flexible as possible, since we offer a national certification program, and you can use it in any way you want to. And like I said, if you complete level 1 and level 2 written exams and certifications by NICET, and add on the modules which are available in aggregates and concrete, for example, you're covered. You're done. You're finished. You have the complete package. So the initial thought was to offer this as a pilot and see how it works, and then figure out maybe a better marriage between the written and the performance exams at a later point in time. see what are the popular modules, see what are the modules which are not really used by very many people. So what are the missing modules we need to add? So that's the reason for the pilot. We want to see how it works with a third-party consulting firm working for us. So I hope I answered.
Good. Thanks, Ahmed. We've got a couple more questions that came in. What is the equivalency of an Associate of Civil Engineering degree with respect to NICET? Does it translate to a NICET 4?
It's a good question.
And I think I can generally answer this, that while there may be some similarities, a degree program is just different than a professional certification. And I don't know if as far as the level of learning, if somebody else wants to, Ahmed or John, want to comment on that. It's just a different way of it's more of the education model versus the practical knowledge model is the big difference. But
yeah, and I would say in addition to what you're saying, even the quality standards recognize that there's a difference between, for example, a person that is scholastically trained and a person that has hands-on technical training. And so the certification process is guided towards hands-on technical training. And so that's really the difference there. So can they be equated? I don't know if they can be equated. They're two different specialties, two different disciplines. An engineer, for example, has versus a technician, but they're used in a unified way in the industry, especially as an individual gains in his technical ability. He's going to hopefully choose certification. He's going to be an asset to the organization. And if he has education or not, it's going to be an asset with his certification. So it's all going to the same map or point on the map, but it's just different ways to get there.
The education provides a very solid foundation for progression, but our certification programs rely on hands-on field experience. So if you've done the work, you'll be able to answer the questions. So, and experience is really developed through the career track model we have from level 1 all the way to level 4. So you cannot say an associate is equal to a level 4. It's not happening. An associate can take you to a level 4, but not equivalent.
all right, thanks. And Leo's back with, so each lab who has personnel testing by performance exam will have to provide equipment and a location to be tested at, correct? And I think it's a question that I see Ahmed nodding. I was going to say if there's a question for John, but
yes, yes, that's true. Yes. So in other words, you want to have a organization or a lab that is doing the testing with personnel that are actually doing the testing. Yes.
okay. And then Mark Henry asks, it appeared to me that the examples shown of a performance exam checklist involve more of a recitation of equipment dimensions than demonstration of procedures. Was I wrong in that perception?
Do we have time to show Mr. Henry a checklist or another checklist?
I think so. I mean, we're coming up on 4 o'clock,
Okay.
but I mean, if
That's a good question. Maybe you didn't see the
Do you have a
complete-
specific one you want me to pull up, John? Can you guys see my screen? This is 1883, Astm D 1883.
Yeah, I would, according to Mr. Henry, he's only seeing, and which is all we can see, is just the apparatus. If you don't mind going to the next sections. So Mr. Henry, after the apparatus, which is first, you'll see the procedures, and they'll be listed as well. And that's on every checklist. It starts with apparatus and then moves into the procedures.
I am trying not to scroll too fast to make you sick.
And I hope that answered your question.
And I do see we have more questions coming in. We are at 4 o'clock, so I do understand that if that you have other plans, that's okay. But if John, if you're willing to stay on for a few
No,
more
no,
minutes
I'll
to
stay
try to
on
get
as long
through
as it
these,
takes. Yep.
and we
sure.
will be able to follow up with questions with the
No, the
safety
questions are
chat
good.
if
Yeah,
we
they're
if we
good.
don't get to everything.
Mhm.
So with respect to responding to an RFQ or SOQ, I realize NICET is always stated as the standard with respect to city work. I understand. So that seems like just a statement. Maybe it comes back. Then NICET used to assume that a level 2 or above, the individual has an associate's degree level of knowledge. And that may just be a misunderstanding. I'm not aware of that. Ahmed's been around longer than I have, and Regina even longer. So
I think when we had the work elements way back when, with quite a bit of the general knowledge and the specials, it was designed to mimic something like that, because we had the basic physical science and the math and all that stuff covered by the work element programs. But since we have updated and switched to the current model of computer-based exams, much of the content focuses on hands-on experience. If somebody comes in with the knowledge, that's great, that's dandy. But it's very difficult to say that a NICET level 2 in asphalt is equivalent to an associate's degree of some sort, because the associate's degree is in general science and civil engineering, and so the focus on the track of asphalt or concrete or soil is not totally there. So currently it's different. Way back when the models were started on the work element side, possible.
thank you. And the next question is about getting a copy of the session. We will make the recording available. And I guess we'll reach out to everybody that registered to let them know when the recording is ready. And then how do we get PDH certificate for this webinar? So for PDH towards an engineering license, we're happy to provide a certificate of attendance you can use for that. We don't, typically aren't doing for engineering for PE's license. If you can use it, we're happy to provide some type of certificate of attendance. And Mark Spence, we do have your information there. Recorded for future, yes. Yes, okay. And then from Leo, thank you, Leo. It says everybody did a great job. So,
Thank you, Leo.
For all those, the staff that helped and all the participants, thank you very much. I think that's the end of my list. Now we can, keep.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
This is Mohammed. Just wanted to know, is there any classes for the NICET 3 concrete? John, if you remember me also.
Yes, I thought that I was hoping that was you. I didn't want to make a mistake. I can't see your face, so I wasn't sure.
So as we talked a little bit about training earlier, NICET intentionally does not get directly involved with training to avoid any implication that we teach to the test. We do have this list of recognized training providers on our website, and some just internet searches can help find additional sources of training. The best place to start, and while this is we're going through the website a bit here showing the training providers, is that training link yeah, thanks. And this kind of gives you a little bit of a guide of how to begin preparation, about the content outlines that are available in the reference material. Some of our programs do have practice tests, but also looking at the experience requirements and the performance measures to help guide you through that. And then seeking potentially some additional training in areas where you might notice after going through that, that you might not be as familiar with.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Mohammed.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to see you too.
All right.
It
Well,
looks
once
like there was
again,
one, sorry, Chip, there was one
I
last
missed one?
question that came in. It asked, when will NICET have its own course textbooks for exams? Do you want to sort of address that one, Chip?
well, I think, yeah. So, you know, it has been something we've talked about, but we do, right now, it is our intention to stay out of the development of training materials, just to avoid the implication of teaching to the test. So it's not anytime soon. It's really not something we're seeking to do at the moment.
Somebody asked them, how do you get PDHs for the presentation?
Yeah, and so for the NICET continuing education towards CPD points, you can make that claim. We've got the list of that you were here when you're recording your points. Well, once again, the PDH, if it's for an engineering license, we're just not that familiar about how that's done in each state. But if you need a certificate attendance, I know some of them require you know, a quiz, some type of you know, and we didn't do that for this event. So if that's something you needed, we don't have that. But if it's just attendance, we can certainly provide a certificate of attendance or some type of something that would, if that's what you need to meet the requirement for a PDH, just let us know.
Hey, Chip, real fast, if I could just comment on the course text concept too, we were talking about earlier. One of the reasons why NICET doesn't do a course text is we don't set the standards. The standards are industry-based, ASTM, AASHTO, NFPA. And so we have to write the exam based on what the industry standard is, not what NICET thinks the standard should be. So that's one of the reasons why there's not necessarily a NICET course text, because we don't create the content. We create the exam content, but not the standards content. And I understand that, yes, it's a lot of content. And the higher up in the level of the exams that you go, the more the content becomes. So yes, I understand it's difficult to pull it all together, but I promise if you pull it all together, you will do as best as you possibly can if you study well.
Thanks, Cassie. And for those who don't know, Cassie is on our development team. And I do see that one of the things, maybe we can start with practice questions. And we do have some practice tests available for some of the programs, and we'll be working more in that area for other programs. And Cassie has worked on some practice tests as well. So thank you. All right, I'm seeing thank you. And yeah, the nightmare to put it all together. Thank you. Thanks again. Just making sure I'm not missing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Henry, Mr. Estrada. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. And questions. Thank you.
So I've gathered a list of everyone that was on the session today. I will send you a letter, certificate of sorts with your CPD points for attending. And as soon as we have information on where we will post the recording, we have a list from when you registered that will send that information out to you as well. So thank you again for joining us. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks,
good
John.
seeing
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Taylor.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care.
What happens when we respond to the messages after the call is finished? Does it still go?
The chat is well. Once the
I'll
call,
get a copy. Yeah, I'll get a copy of the chat, so we'll have all of the questions. We can probably figure out how to get those questions, and then if we wanted to provide answers to the questions, we could probably link that somehow with the recording.
Yeah, good questions.